What's up, everybody? So today, as promised, our episode is going to be a wake. We are going to sit Shiva. We are going to do a memorial service for Playmates 2022-2023 line of Star Trek action figures. And so, as we promised, we wanted to incorporate what you feel, what you have been thinking and expressing to us about this whole process, about the Playmates line, this version, about why it didn't succeed, about what you wish it had been, what you wish to be in the future, and all of your more intelligent observations about the entire thing. And so I expected, when I said this last week, that we'd have 15, 20 comments to go over. Well, we have over 200. So we are going to go in there. If we have to do a part two, maybe we'll do a part two. We'll see. But we want to make sure that everybody's voice is heard and everybody gets a chance to weigh in. Mike, how are you doing other than being a little desaturated today? Have you done something different with your skin?
Yeah, it's hemp lotion, Keith. It works wonders. So yeah, it's been... The positive, I guess, has been that so many people have checked out the channel and written in with their feelings, and not nearly as scathing as I was expecting. Now there's plenty of heat to be read, but there was some respect, and we share a lot of the same opinions about the post-mortem. And also, I want to say a personal, for the channel, thank you to all the people who shared this video on Facebook, on social media, we were hardly the ones to break it, Keith, but we were able to get our faces on the internet quickly enough that which apparently
that's how you manufacture truth these days.
Yeah.
So that's how that works.
So it's led to us to have some conversations about where we want to take the show, and that's great. These are all good things. Movement is positive, but before we can move forward, Keith, we have to pay respect to what we've lost.
So the way we're going to do this, we are just going to read your comments in the order that they came in, have a little discussion, and just see what happens, because we're kind of loosey-goosey here.
Now, there's a bunch of threading under a lot of these comments I'm noticing now, too. Are we going to go through that as well, or just kind of the major...
Well, I think that is at the reader's discretion, if it feels like it's germane. So let's begin with our old friend, Gorbachev. A lot of these names are all over the place, so we're going to get them wrong, but that's okay. It doesn't mean that we don't love and respect what you're up to. Who says, at the Playmates being canceling the figure line, not the ship line, because a lot of people have that question. The ships, hopefully, will still be coming. So Gorbachev says that was to be expected. Apart from Star Trek not being as popular as it was in the 90s, they've done a lot wrong. Starting with the scale being different, going to packaging not matching the old ones. That's true. They had the retro feel, but they were not the same scale, so they don't match if you keep them in packaging as well. At least outside of the US, that's true. Both of them were very different. They just didn't have a full grip of what the nostalgia-driven collectors want to buy. Mattel and Hasbro show how good these lines can go if done right. And Stephen Minjoni, 8765, says, yes, would love for Hasbro to get their hands on this property. They'd have some epic HasLab projects for sure. I don't know what that is. Do you know what that is, Mike?
I don't.
What a HasLab?
I'm going to check it out. I had mentioned in that thread, Keith, that I have been semi-collecting some of the Indiana Jones line that Hasbro released and then apparently canceled. But they had, I think, 3 full waves of it. And they're awesome. The articulation's great and whatnot. And so to go a little bit deeper, you might ask Gorbachev, what exactly is the things they could have done better? And he says, to answer your question, they should have used the same scale with finer details and updated articulation, as well as more realistic sculpt overall would have been appreciated. They should have used them the same style card backs and size so the figures blend in with your old ones, like Keith has mentioned many times, and also the overall face sculpts and quality in general could have been better, etc. All right. So thank you, Gorbachev. Thank you for writing in with your words. We go to Christian Hansard, who says they should have done like the TMNT line and released the 90s ones. The new ones weren't good. I even passed on them in the clearance section.
Yeah, well, there you go. I mean, I think we're going to have a theme going that they ventured too far from the 90s figures. It's a theme I happen to agree with. Let's see what Stephen Mingioni 8765 says. Look, here's the thing. Your channel product reviews have been too kind and forgiving of the Playmates Star Trek toy line, which, in my humble opinion, has lacked the quality of its 90s predecessors. I wouldn't be surprised if the ships and roleplay items don't make it out in 2024. Regarding the figures, Playmates couldn't compete with the action figure aftermarket, which is still going up strong on eBay. Too kind, Mike?
Well, as I responded in kind, these things are 100% subjective, I think, and I didn't have the complete affinity as you did. I mean, 80s and 90s toys were built like tanks. I mean, you can't compare a lot of that quality issues, but I think we've always approached these reviews, Keith, as fans, as wanting to root for things, and so I think with that absolutely comes a bit of a positive bias, but I feel that for the most part, since a lot of the times we're shelling out our own money on this stuff, we're critical where necessary. But we want to root for things, so I would take that criticism as fair.
And I think that's I do think it's fair. Also, you're right. I mean, we are a channel that likes things. You know, there's so much of so many channels, so many YouTubes whose brand is to dislike everything. Mm-hmm. Well, we're not that.
Yeah.
You know, and I think we're honest. I think I've never seen something that I disliked and didn't point it out. Ever. I've always been completely honest. I do, however, just I like more stuff than I dislike. Mm-hmm. So
I think that's also, kind of our deal. You know, and we try to say this a lot. It's probably annoying at this point, but we are in a relatively privileged position financially in that we're not like. So I think there is a more of a fiscal burden on people buying these things if they're crappy. If you shelled money out. So I understand. But we've also noticed that Playmates has often tried to keep the price points fair. And so in doing so, you have to make some concessions.
There are some compromises, for sure. Hypertensive Films weighs in, saying, I keep hearing rumors that we're getting 2 ships and 2 role-playing toys for 2024. Well, that would be good. The first ship, according to Hypertensive Films, will be a remake of the next-gen Klingon attack cruiser, and the role-play will be the original series Tricorders. Those will release in May 2024. The second ship and role-play toy, yet to be announced or hinted at, will be released winter 2024. I do think past 2024, especially if those toys don't sell well, Playmates will probably just give up on the license and let it lapse, similar to McFarlane. The Klingon attack cruiser. Be an odd choice. I get that it was sort of in the series 1 of the release last time, but like, is that the one we're all clamoring for? Don't we want Voyager? Don't we want the Defiant? Like, yeah, I mean, sure, yeah, I want it, but like, is that in my next top 5? I don't think it is.
At Doomed, says, the writing was on the wall, friends, but it's not completely bleak. The Haya figures seem like they're going to be pretty cool. We just gotta wait for them to get past the J.J. Abrams film, and Super 7 has the TNG Ultimates in the pipeline, even though they're expensive and slow to release.
Yep, no, for sure. And Brian Giles says Super 7 is going to make G.I. Joe O-Ring figures starting in 2024. That's pretty cool. Would be very interesting to get some Star Trek O-Ring figures. Interesting.
Yeah, I'll mention this quickly here as a request to anybody who might watch this as these sort of wakes get a little more, have been getting a little traction. Keith and I are planning on checking out other toy lines, and I don't have a very comprehensive knowledge of all of the different niche markets and the different people doing cool stuff, you know, Super 7, Haya, and et cetera. So if you have lines that you think would be cool to check out on the channel, hit us up look at my Star Trek toys at gmail.com. Yeah, and if you have any direct contacts at these places, their marketing teams or whatnot, definitely let us know.
Do you run a toy company?
Yeah, I'm
Are
sure
you the cartoon Monopoly man sitting here watching this, sitting in a pile of toys?
You say? Toys!
Ah, toys! Scrooge McDuck, send us your toys. We will review them. Anyway, so Wolf L2TN says, why? Are they canceling? I'm assuming is why. So we get one wave of figures, and so long, see you later, consumer. Yup. I mean, to be fair, they had 2 if you count Prodigy, but yeah, kind of. That's what's happening.
I think the
there.
answer is money. At Andrew Hayes, 88.
Andrew Hayes.
Yeah, what's up?
Patron.
Literally the only place I have seen Series 1 was at the local comic book store that I shared the picture about with a year and a half ago, at least, if not longer. I've never seen them at Walmart or Toys R Us here in Canada at all. God bless that you have Toys R Us. It was even literally the other night when I checked last just to see when I had to do a Walmart visit. It's very unfortunate they had no choice to end this line. Glad they haven't fully given up on the Star Trek Universe license with the ships and roleplay items. I look forward to what they have in store in the future with that stuff.
Yeah, and I'm actually checking for reels. Yes. So Andrew has actually messaged us on Instagram at Star Trek Toys, where he did find these. I don't know what store it was that he found it at up in Canada, our neighbors to the north. So Kevin Miles says the quality of the new figures felt cheap, not as sturdy as the 90s figures. They should have beefed up the quality issued figures that were new and sold them for collectors in specialty stores and online. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the criticism of this new line of figures will be that what they had to do to give us all the extra articulation cost us a little bit in the indestructibility of the 90s line. I mean, the 90s line will survive the nuclear winter. But these, you do get more articulation, which is great, but they're not nearly as sturdy.
It's interesting because articulation means very little to me. In fact, if you go back on our channel and check it out, we did a whole thing of the Playmates Dick Tracy toys that I collected back in the 90s. And for me, what I loved about that line was that it was one wave. It was a very hyper-specific set of figures they chose. Very limited articulation, just basic rotation at the arms and legs. But they spent the time on making really creative artistic decisions, getting really cool sculpts, and blowing it out. So I'd much rather we hyper-focus than get super...
articulate. Yeah. Well, I to be fair, let's call out our bias.
Yeah.
We are both over 40. We have lost our articulation, so we're not expecting anybody else to have it.
Why should my toys have it?
Yeah, I can't bend my knees.
At Paul Kiki 68 says, I can understand their reasoning. Playmates figures had to compete with the Super 7 3.34 inch Star Trek figures that were already out there. Glad to see that they are continuing to ship in roleplay items. I hope to get their Star Trek Prodigy phaser, and I'm hoping that they make a classic series tricorder.
I think the classic series tricorder is probably more likely than the Prodigy phaser at this point, though they did announce it. We'll see. And Giles that brings up Super 7 again, can license. Maybe they can take the license for the 90s style Star Trek figures and continue it. Oh, that's interesting. I wonder if another company...
Yeah, there's a lot of conversation in the comments about basically doing an in-season trade here. Like clearing some of the salary cap. I don't know how any of those economics work, so it's hard to say. I would love for another line to run with it, clearly.
Make a deal with Varner Studios and do it in that style. That's interesting. Very interesting. So Mr. Michael PM chimes in saying Playmates originally did the classic original series phaser, communicator, and tricorder. That's true. I'm hoping if they retool and re-release the original series style tricorder, it will be a full-size prop scale, as their original version was about 75% scale with a strap that was too short for adults to use as a cosplay prop. Interesting point. The Playmates tricorder was scaled down for smaller and teenage kids. It was still pretty accurate in all the details and had the right sound effects, but it was too small and made for smaller kids' hands to play with. That is such a good point. I didn't know that. And what an interesting decision to scale it down a little bit. I would imagine that if they re-release it, it'll be the same scale. Not for smaller hands, because you can make it for a smaller price.
Keith, the market speaks, maybe to Playmates' success. At Human Biped says, as an adult Trekkie that would buy their stuff, I'm definitely more interested in the ships.
Yeah. Well, I think that's been borne out. Sean's Toy Room says, if I could find a next generation bridge set for the modern figures I found, I would be happy. Or a refit Enterprise bridge for the Kirk and Spock figures. Yeah, I don't know if they have any plans to do a play set, but I would, and interestingly, because I want the figures to be exactly the same, whatever. I have the next gen bridge set, which is great. But if they're going to re-release it, I'd love it for it to be even more realistic, like and go even further in that direction. But I want the figures the same. I don't know. I'm a hypocrite. That's what happens.
It's interesting to me that there's so much back and forth on that because from my perspective, and I understand the nostalgia factor. I don't have it as hard for the Trek stuff like I mentioned, but I do. Action figures of the 80s and 90s.
You're working on it.
Action figures of the 80s and 90s did have a certain joie de vivre, if you will. But some of the incredible stuff I've seen from Hasbro, from McFarlane, some of the really awesome different arms, NECA toys, things like that. It's hard not to want the newest, latest, best technology in the stuff you love. No, do you not feel that way? Or is it just about retrofitting it into your old collection?
Well, because...
Is there room for both, Keith?
Oh, sure. I think there should be a line of the latest, greatest, best, and the nostalgia line. Okay. I think you need to have the two pipelines, because for me, Star Trek, especially 90s Trek, is still about nostalgia for me. It's about re-experiencing that feeling that I had right when it first came out. And I think that is what it is for a lot of folks. I mean, there are fancier Picard figures all over the place, but the one that is my touchstone, the one that has that special, joie de plastic, as you would put it, like, it is that style. So, I mean, it's why people don't like the new contemporary Trek, because it doesn't smell like the 90s. And that's why the 60s fans didn't like the 90s, because it didn't smell like the 60s. And so it's a nostalgia play. And so, yes, of course there's room for the super fancy ones, but give me my old school.
All right, here was a popular thread. We had F. Jeffrey Falk, 3278. Falk. Agree with much of what you've said. In a continuation of the 90s line, they should have known that we haven't forgotten buying the same figures with different uniforms. These were the same figures, same uniforms, different looking. It was a full swing and a massive miss for me. New figures that were in the line with the previous line would have seen me buy. They did this to themselves. No market research makes sense given their chosen path.
Yeah. Yep. Some people saying they really like the figures being able to sit down, and the new articulation. I agree. That is handy. Mm-hmm. That is nice. I think a lot of people, and there's still a lot of more debate about the scale. Now that they're all 5 inches, is like, it's 5-inch scale. Is it? The scale has never been particularly consistent. I was more concerned about the scale until I saw the figures, and they do fit in. To my eye, is there a cricket?
No, man.
Is my comment really that boring, Mike?
That's hysterical that my soundboard just decided that we sucked. What is going on? I can't
your
stop
cat
it.
Hit? What is happening?
I don't know, but I'm just turning it off. That's the solution to that.
That's hilarious.
Just to reiterate the back and forth here, I liked the articulation in the new ones. This is at Todd Pletz 49. I liked the articulation in the new one too. They did bump up the height a bit of all the figures by half an inch. This wasn't a deal breaker for me, but many collectors were in an uproar. I'm not upset that Playmates relaunched the line, but I am extremely PO'd that they left us hanging exactly like they did in 2009, and then have the audacity to blame us fans for the line's failure.
Yeah, fair. Yeah, it's. I think it has been made very clear, and I've talked to some folks offline as well about it. Like, it's never the people doing the work, designing these figures, producing them, putting them together. It's the mucky mucks up top who I don't think thought this through very well. I think it's just clear. They just did not think through this release well at all. So at Tear939 says the reasons sound legit, but not at the same time.
Interesting.
I have been looking in most stores here in Canada and haven't seen one figure. Hard to say they aren't selling well when they don't seem to be fully released to sell outside the US. That is a really fair
100%.
point.
At Brian Salvage Jr., 757. Well, this sucks. This was going to be my number one new line to collect, as I really wanted to get all of the crews, especially the TOS crew in the Wrath of Khan uniforms. I feel they would have done better if they just released waves during Strange New Worlds and Picard Season 3, as well as doing the old scale from the 90s one. Hey, listen, I know there's debate, and I know that I don't have my full cred, my Trek cred yet, but I was a big fan of having fun with Strange New Worlds. I would have been all in on that line. Look, the Prodigy show, which I've only watched a couple episodes, love the figure line. I know some people felt other ways about it. I want to love stuff, right? So I'm going to buy it.
Right.
So it sucks that at least we got the full Prodigy line. Well, almost, right? We never saw that Janeway.
Never saw that Janeway. Yeah, I mean,
that Yankum Pog is awesome. The Prodigy line is awesome.
Yeah. I think if they were going to do something different, like they did, with new articulation, new sculpt style or whatever, I think start with the contemporary shows, right? Because when these first came out, they were dealing with shows that were running in that very moment. If you're going to do nostalgia shows, if you're going to represent the 80s, 90s, whatever, you have to do it exactly that style. So I would have loved to have seen the third generation Trek shows represented in their own style. But
it's hard to know the all of the machinations behind the scenes. It is interesting, right, that they decided. So if we make the choice binary for our first wave, we could do new stuff, or we could kind of re-release old stuff to test the waters. And you opt for B, and it doesn't go great, then to just assume that A wouldn't have worked either is tough.
No, and that's totally fair. I mean, so many people have also said, like, you released figures we already have that are almost, but not quite right. I think they would have done better just re-releasing the actual. But we'll get to the comment. And I thought perhaps the smartest thing said on this entire thread when we get there is somebody pointing out that these figures that they put out, which we already have, are directly competing with the old figures, which are available everywhere and on eBay.
Yeah, so we read that one already, but
it comes up a couple of times. But it's like, so you want a Picard Playmates figure? Well, you can have one for $5 or $15. You're cannibalizing your own stuff, and you're competing against yourself, and that you get yourself in trouble. So Elam Arthur Lee says,
he comes in hot. He
comes in hot. I'm ready.
Let's do it.
I'm going to read it hot. Canceling these for disappointing sales is such an insult when they did pretty much zero marketing for any of them. So what do they expect? Unless it's from a Ninja Turtle range, Playmates has done nothing to support anything these last 2 years. The online presence of the Trek figures is shockingly silent, thanks only to Playmates. Blaming fans for low sales is a shady move, when many probably had no idea they even existed. And those who did had an absolute bitch of a time working out where and when to get the few they did get released. FYI, we still can't get a hold of the Prodigy figures in the UK. This is really sad, an absolutely wasted opportunity, and Playmates rubbing salt in the wound by blaming fans for their incompetent strategies is the last straw. Did I do that hot enough?
That's pretty good, man. Listen, he brings up a really interesting nuance here that I've brought up on the channel a couple times, but for those of you who haven't watched a lot of it, here's what part of the play for me, Keith, I know the collecting is the thing for you, right?
Yeah.
Part of the play for me is the seek and find, right? I do not get the itch scratched if I just find some YouTube links Amazon links and buy the stuff, right? That works in a pinch, but I like to go to my store. When Toys R Us shuttered here in the United States, I shed a tear. I mean, that sucks. I loved going and looking for toys. So the fact that I actively was one of the dudes who wanted that Enterprise D and went to every Target in 50-mile radius. You can check out our video on it. And could not get my hands on one. Had to find one Target employee who was nice enough to seek it out for me and direct ship it to me. Is an absolute is ludicrous. Now, there's some threading underneath that comment about like organizing a protest and flooding their contacts and whatnot. I don't know that I'm fully on board with that because, like Keith said, a lot of these people are just employees. They want to go on Christmas break. I don't know that they need 8,000 emails to go through, but...
Well, all the people you would be emailing are not the people making the decisions who screwed this up.
And also Keith said it, and let's say it right here at the middle of this video. I have a suspicion that this will equal a good amount of manufacturing people, artists at the studios, different people who might lose their jobs or get laid off or whatnot. For any of those people, regardless of the tenor of these comments or our videos, we do wish you to land on your feet, find a new gig. Like, this sucks for a lot of people also that work for the company.
And I think you did tremendous work.
Yeah.
The decisions about which work you did, we can all disagree with, but you did tremendous work, and 100%. We're grateful that you did it.
Yes, Adrian Betts, 9146. I hope your betting goes well. If you look at what Hasbro is doing with the G.I. Joe classified line, 6-inch figures, fantastic articulation, photo real likenesses, great accessories specific to the character, updating the classic 80s line, but keeping the classic character selection and updating them for the adult collector market, 100% agree. They're even branching out into vehicles now. More importantly, they have adapted on the fly as collectors push back by artistic decisions being made to the designs just to meet the demand. I would rebuy the entire 90s Playmates line if they were updating and pitched like this. I was disappointed with the selection we got, rehashing old generic accessories and a softer plastic, different bases. I agree that the character selection was odd, and I would have started with the cast of Strange New Worlds. Pitch it to the new and old fans alike.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well said.
Good point. John Hillenbrand, 2917, agrees. Hypertensive Films has more to say, saying this is very disappointing, but to be expected. The figure line was doomed from the start with the poor rollout and even poorer quality. I should do this hot again. When Playmates first announced, all the way back in January 2022, they were taking over the license again. We saw a teaser image that hinted at figures from Michael Burnham, TNG Data, Picard-era Jean-Luc Picard, Strange New World, Pike, and Saru. Instead, we were given a line that consisted of remakes of figures Star Trek fans have already owned for 3 decades now, with Burnham and Saru being the only 2 new offerings. Oh my God, there's a lot. Besides that, the decision to release them in 5-inch scale so they don't fit in older 90s Playmates line versus 6-inch figures was a mistake. If Playmates really wanted to appeal to the 90s collectors who are now adults, they would have adhered to the 90s style, for sure. Or they should have updated with the times. Marvel Legends and Black Series have proven to be enormously successful, even through inflation has started affecting collecting in general. The adult collector expects more out of their action figures now. If Playmates wanted to appeal to Trek collectors, producing high-quality 6-inch figures would have been the optimal decision, or going all the way retro throwback versus cherry-picking retro elements, but updating the sculpts. Yeah, agree with all of that. I mean, there really is just an era here of like pick a lane. And continuing with what they'd like to see moving forward, if they're just going to focus on ships and role-playing items, are ships and role-playing toys from the newer shows. Give us toys we don't already own and haven't already seen. This is my feeling about the Klingon ship. I am hearing rumors that the next ship is a remake of the next-gen Klingon attack cruiser. Yes. And I will definitely pass on that if that is the next ship. Give us the Titan A, the Enterprise G, the Enterprise F, or the Cerritos, or the Protostar. At the very least, if Playmates is going to remake old ships, give us a proper version of the Enterprise E, or more ships like the Voyager or Defiant. I could not agree with that more.
Well, Keith, since you agree, let's compliment you. At Jason Moe 3144. What's up, Jason Moe? It's almost worth the death to the new Playmates line just to see the amazing thumbnail Keith designed, and the image for this YouTube video.
That was 100% AI. I tried a whole bunch of different things, but here's the part that I didn't even notice, which I forget who it was, but somebody was so kind to me. Because read the headstone there, Mike.
R.I.P. Playmates Star Trek something to something. It's very
Try
small.
again. Star what?
Star Rex. I've noticed that AI has troubles. Even if you tell specifically what to say, it has trouble. Yeah.
And so like I didn't notice that. You didn't notice it the first time you read it.
No.
And so, but I forget who it was. Maybe we'll get to it. So it was like, oh, I thought you put that in intentionally because of all the typos in the Playmates packaging.
Oh, that's a lot of credit.
I'm like, yes, I did 100% intentionally. Yeah.
It just goes to prove that rule that, we actually read by symbol recognition. We don't actually look at every letter.
That is absolutely true. Yep. And that is why, unrelated, I think I mentioned it before on some show we've done, I don't know how ridiculous, but like I can read a 1,000-page novel, close it, you ask me the main character's name, I won't be able to tell you.
Yeah.
Because I just have a symbol and I just go with it.
William Torres 1406 is very disappointed, but they're wishing Playmates well and that they maybe change their mind. And then John Hillebrand 2917 is back. Keith, Bonnie Hope, they continue the ships. Really hope, maybe he meant to say. In fact, I'm frustrated that they don't.
No, Bonnie Hope. I think it's like, isn't it like Irish?
Yes, let's go.
Like a Bonnie Lass?
Yeah,
it could be. Yeah.
Do it. You know what, Keith? Read John Hillebrand 2917 in your best Irish accent.
Oh, no, that's offensive.
Bonnie Hope, they continue the ships. In fact, I'm frustrated that they don't release enough of the ships faster, actually. I'll buy up multiple versions of these ships.
Yes. I'll do it in my best leprechaun. Playmates, release a Voyager, a Defiant, a Deep Space Nine, a Borg Cube and an Enterprise E, a Borg Cube, a Borg Sphere, a Romulan Warbird, a Klingon battle cruiser. Do it! They'll sail.
Call Meanie? He's on the show?
He will come and slap you silly.
Yeah. Dennis Thomas 5869 says, I think the mistake Playmates made is trying to sell us mostly figures we already have from the 90s line. They should have started with filling in the holes in the old line. That's Keith Varney through and through.
Agreed. Ken Marsh says, hi guys, one of the things that didn't help with sales here in the UK is that we had to wait so long to get the figures here as usual. Very common complaint. The main place I was able to get any of these first wave was online in a handful of stores. Amazon sells things at a good price, but we got killed here by greedy by people selling them for 40 to 55 pounds a piece when the retail price was $12.99. I managed to get all the next gen Wrath of Khan and the 2 Discovery figures, but because we got the Prodigy ones in April this year, I've only been able to get 2 out of the 4. With a few weeks in the store, with a few of the stores that had them, running out of stock bar on Amazon is running out. Knowing that they will be not doing any other waves, they will be rare and even harder to get here. Personally, I wasn't keen on the way they looked, and the build quality was bad, and the cards were plain, and no way as good as the ones released in the USA. Yeah, because the international got completely different cards. Not entirely sure why. I agree with you people that the people who got the 90s figures would be the ones who bought the ones like got them as kids. We're going to buy them today. Yeah. It's a shame. I was looking forward to getting more of these figures, but at least we might get other ships and anything else. I agree with everything you have said on this video. I'm not even sure I agree with everything I said on the video.
At Pinois 78, bummer, but I didn't really want the figures anyway. Just give me those ships and that Starfleet tech.
Yes, Dennis Thomas weighs in again, saying they should have filled in stuff. Ray Wallace fan 7786 says, I purchased the Wrath of Khan figures assuming that there would be a second wave. But according to the images you showed us, that was never even in the planning stages. As a result, I stopped buying the figures altogether. I think that's a big point. Like, people want complete sets of stuff.
Yeah.
I don't want half of the bridge, half of the cast. I want the whole cast. And I think going scattershot is one of the problems. He continues, Prodigy figures... The Wrath of Khan figures were the only ones I was able to find at my Target and Walmart stores, and not the Prodigy figures, which I would have thought would have more appeal to Gen Z.
Yeah,
I think Playmates should have sold Strange New Worlds and Prodigy at retail. If those lines were successful, then move on to other lines after a year or two. After all, Playmates only sold Next Generation figures at retail at the very beginning before later giving us Deep Space Nine and original series options to follow. Yes, I think that's such a good point.
Yeah, if any of these toys were going to sell at retail, right? For me, remember we talked when we started this channel in the beginning, Keith? As a kid, I rolled into these stores and just pointed because things looked cool. Those Prodigy figures looked cool. And I have never seen one at retail. Don't know if they even went to retail, to be honest with you. I had to get them all on Amazon.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's I just like the point that Playmates Wave 1 was the whole cast. Plus, it was everybody, so that if you're a next gen fan, you can buy all of Wave 1 and have a complete set. And I think that was such an important part of it, because when I started, because I had the Galoob figures, and when I started, like, oh, maybe I'll get some of the Playmates ones, and that was as an adult. I didn't buy them as a kid. I was like, all right, my plan, right? I was like, let me just get the next gen cast, just them. Well, of course, it's like crack, and then ended up like I have 300 some odd of them behind me, but it was, I don't want some of them. I want the entire cast, and then give me the whole cast of Deep Space Nine. Give me the whole cast of Voyager. Yeah. Anyway, Mike, we've been going for a good 40 minutes now on part 1 here.
I think let's finish. There's a long thread here from our friend Brian Giles. He's coming a little hot, Keith. I think you should read it with as hot, okay. Keith, and we'll end it with this one.
Well, we'll end it with this one, and then we'll pick up part 2 next week. All right, here we go. I was the biggest cheerleader for Playmates in 2022. They did this to themselves, and they deserve to crash and burn. I honestly feel no motivation to buy their role play or ships, because the biggest draw for me was the figures. I really hope Haya and Super 7 can do something with it, because I don't think I have it in me to support any future attempts by Playmates. Absolutely disgusted with the company. Whew.
There's a bunch of debate about whether wishing that Ilum a company is worth it, but I think his comment is more in protest than anything else. Actually, I lied. I don't think we should end it there. Let's end with this next one by Hypertensive Films, because it's a little more proactive, Keith, if you will.
I like it.
And I think it brings up a good point and then we'll all take another siesta until next week, and we'll continue, because I think I'm really enjoying reading your comments, and I think it's good for conversation.
This is definitely fun.
If Playmates is listening or reading, we want ships and roleplay toys from the newer shows. Yes. Give us the Titan A, Enterprise G, the Cerritos, the Protostar, which we're promised. Or at the very least, remake ships we love. Voyager Enterprise E, the Defiant, etc. If you're just focusing on, this is big time, if you're just focusing on ships and roleplay toys, you should be able to produce a lot more versus one ship roleplay toy per year. And that's where I think they might have continued to shoot themselves in the foot. Yeah. Because in their release here about this, is they said we're shifting our focus to this other sector, right? However, does that mean they're actually doing that? Or they just have like 1 or 2 toys in the pipeline that they're going to release, and you're going to see one phaser or this one thing, in which case that's a massive bummer, because you're setting up expectation for a group of people are pretty thirsty for stuff.
Well, and I think honestly, like, the pace of stuff, now I get it, right? It's very expensive to build these things, and it takes time, and it's a huge investment, that kind of stuff.
You are a toy company, though.
Part of that is, part of that, well...
It's like, that's what you do, right? I was like, I know it's very hard. It's very hard to make a podcast. It's very hard recording, setting aside some time on a Saturday. Yeah, I get it, but that's what you do.
That is... Okay. You know what? I take it back. Nope, you're 100% right. Yeah, so...
Stephen King, I know it's very hard writing a book. It takes a long time.
No, that's fair. Whatever you do it faster, because I think people's impatience, we get impatient, and then especially in this day and age where our attention span is so short, there's a million things coming at us. You've got to keep it going. You got to keep the pipe primed. Otherwise, we're going to forget that it's even happening.
I think what we've heard today, and you and I have said, it's about commitment, right? It's just not a market in which you can like test a bunch of stuff. I think you got to pick a lane and go for it. Now, you may succeed, you may fail, but at least you went for it. If you just kind of half commit to anything, you're not going to succeed at anything. It seems like in this market. Yeah. And Keith, I don't know if we've succeeded in mourning properly, so I feel like we're going to have to continue to do so.
Yeah, but it's, if you sit Shiva, it's not just all in one day. Yeah. So we will see you back here next week with part 2 of your thoughts and feelings about the end of the Star Trek Playmates line. Till then, hold on. You can check out our other shows. We're reviewing Deep Space Nine. You definitely don't want to miss that. Yeah, it's awesome. Super, super fun. We have K&M Geekly every week. You can join our Patreon at patreon.com/K&M and get even more nonsense, including we just dropped an interview with my older brother, Sean, who worked on the sound effects of Voyager and Enterprise and talks about how you create all of those iconic, amazing sound effects you know and love. You don't want to miss it. Patreon.com/K&M. All right, we will see you back next week with another episode of
Oh,
Darkness?
So sad. Just so sad.
Look at my Star Trek toy!